What famous person did you regret meeting because they were an A? Met Tiger Woods when I was 15. He slapped my hat out of my hand. A different golfer whom I didn't know ran up, picked up my hat and asked if his signature would be okay. I agreed, but I don't know who he was or what his name was, but my grandpa was pleased upon seeing it. Jared Leto. I sat next to him on a flight from Monterrey, Mexico back in 2018. Absolute a-hole. Jared Leto hit on my girlfriend at the time and called me fat. His brother Shannon was super nice though. To be fair, I am fat, but I knew that already. Lol. I met him at a show. Had a similar experience. He was a total rude, aloof dickhead, and his brother was super lovely, warm and sweet. I was the A. I saw Don Cheadle at an airport and was thinking about Ocean's 11 and said to my friend, dude, it's Bernie Mac, and he looked back and said, no, I'm the other black guy from Ocean's 11, but at least you liked the movie. Damn. You effed up lol. He handled that pretty well. David Cross is pretty miserable. He's from Atlanta and his sister runs a food truck in town. Her recipes were all named after David Cross Arrested Development type stuff. So my wife and I, being fans of David, asked about it and she told us she was his sister. So for months we chat her up anytime we order food from her truck, and eventually David's in town. She invites us to come to the food truck park to meet him. So we bring a poster from the early 2000s and are super pumped to meet him. We get there and she's very anxious and hesitant to introduce us. Weird, but okay. No. It's okay, I'll introduce you. She doesn't. He was incredibly dismissive and unpleasant. Never heard of anyone having a good interaction with him. Best interaction was with Conan O'Brien. He's a total class act. Chatted him up in a bathroom line of all places and said my wife and I were huge fans. He said we should come by the table to chat. I told him we didn't want to interrupt his dinner, but he insisted. Then asked if we wanted pictures, and was super cool. Kurt Vonnegut. I had to get in touch with him frequently for work. At a non-profit. For several years. He was never once even vaguely polite. So it goes. Beyonce's dad. Jerk to wait staff. Snoop and his dad were awesome. Though, that, bar none, was and forever will be my favorite bartending gig. That doesn't surprise me about Beyonce's dad. Her fans know he's a dick. From treating her mom like sh to pretending he's the reason she's famous. My dad has been a radio personality for over 30 years and worked in country music for over half of it. He gets to meet celebrities semi-regularly. Apparently Keith Urban was really nice. Carrie Underwood was kind of mediocre BC. He caught her right after her performance and she was tired. But Kenny Chesney puts the D&D bag. Direct quote from my dad. Kenny promised to sign some pictures, shirts, etc. for a couple of kids who won a game through the radio. Kenny instead took a bunch of groupies into one of the back rooms of the radio station with a bottle of whiskey and locked the door. When my dad tried to get him to open the door and fulfill his end of the deal, he called the cops on my dad, and he was lucky enough to get a cop who was a good acquaintance. Cop said there wasn't much he could do other than make Kenny leave, so that's what he did. Kids never got their stuff signed, so my dad gave them some coupons for free pizza. He said that after a few years other radio hosts told him they had similar encounters. Can confirm. Before he was famous, he was touring state fairs. After the show he asked my friend and I to join him on his tour bus. We were 16. We went and hung out for a bit, got some free beers, and then when he asked us to go back to the hotel, we noped out of there. I have the perfect combination of bad star good star. It was at Dragon Con, maybe 2005. I'm going through the big autograph room, waiting to get David Carradine's autograph. He looked so mad. He didn't say a word as I told him how much I enjoyed his work. Okay, get it, maybe he was having a bad day. Next to MR. Carradine was Mark Singer, star of Beastmaster, V, etc. MR. Singer is smiling, talking to people as they go by. He looks genuinely happy to be there. Suddenly, a woman behind me stumbled and dropped a huge stack of materials she wanted autographed. Carradine looked down on her like she was a bug. Mark Singer jumped over his table and started helping the woman pick up her things. Didn't hesitate one moment. Just started helping. That's when I decided that if I ever became famous, I was going to try to be like Mark Singer, not David Carradine. Bobby Flay. We paid hundreds of dollars to go to a fancy event he was participating in. Waited for a long time to just meet him and say hi. He looked at us and walked away. Was a dick about it too. Never really liked Bobby Flay. The dude basically took Iron Chef and tried to steal it and Americanize it and call himself an Iron Chef. I've eaten at Mesa Grill in Vegas, not surprised it lost its Michelin star. Also Flay has no other restaurants with a Michelin star. At this point he is just a celebrity that is a chef, slaps his name on a few wristwearants, that's it. Reggie Jackson. He was a childhood idol of mine. I got the opportunity to get a photo with him at some booth at a trade show called Internet World years ago during the .com boom. No one was in line to get pictures with him, so I walked up to get a photo while he was apparently trying to get the girls in the next booth over to sleep with him. He acted all bugged that I asked for a photo, even though that is what he was hired for, and rolled his eyes. I guess he thought I cock blocked him by just showing up in line to get a picture. I tossed the picture in the trash once I got it. Later that day I got a bull signed by Steve Garvey, who was super nice. He replaced Reggie Jackson as my hero that night. Most interactions involving Reggie Jackson that I've read about have been negative. That said, my dad used to work as a mechanic and I'm not sure if he worked on Reggie's car, but he got to speak with him for a short time. Said he was a nice enough guy. My mom was pregnant with me at the time and he asked him if he could write an autograph for me, which he was happy to do. I still have it. Just on a regular cardstock piece of paper. It says Redditing at work 5. Good luck. MR. October. He also met Ricky Henderson a few times through the same place and my dad loves Ricky Henderson. Says the Man of Steel is always cool and pleasant. I've got a couple signed cards from him. Me and my sister saw Alec Baldwin, Tina Fey, and Salma Hayek on the street when we were eating lunch. They were just coming out of a car, about to go into some building next to us. We had no idea why they were together, but in retrospect it was definitely because they were filming 30 Rock together. My sister said, "Oh my god, is that Tina Fey?" And Alec Baldwin turned around and went right in her face and said, "Don't effing say that. Don't speak to us. Why would you say something like that? You can't speak to us. Not now." But it didn't really end there. He yelled again at us outside his building, saying, "Don't look over here. Turn around and eat your food. F off." He sounded genuinely furious at us, almost like he wanted us to yell back and start something with him. Honestly, my sister was on the verge of tears. It was horribly embarrassing. Everybody knows now that Alec Baldwin has a history of screaming at people, but at the time we had no idea. Don't get me wrong, my sister shouldn't have yelled at Tina Fey like that, but the way Alec snapped was straight up scary, like he was about to physically hurt her. Salma Hayek and some other lady who I didn't recognize came over and apologized to us. She asked if we wanted her to go and get Tina and get her autograph because apparently Tina felt bad too, but we said no. She then talked to us about the food we were eating, which was Mexican food, and we ended up having a brief conversation about NY's lack of quality Mexican food. She was incredibly charismatic and sweet. I met Baldwin once myself. I always look for his name in threads like this to see if anyone else has had a similar experience. The guy was a complete a-hole. Even after borrowing a pen to write some notes for an impromptu speech he was about to give, it about ruined 30 Rock for me. Ace Frehley of Kiss. It was at a rock and roll TV movie memorabilia convention in the mid-90s, shortly before the Kiss reunion, and he clearly didn't want to be there. He didn't talk to fans, didn't say hi, hell, he didn't even look at you when you came to his table. He just signed whatever you placed in front of him and then you were hustled away. On the other hand, Adam Batman West was at the next signing table and he was a totally cool guy. Shook hands, chatted with everyone, signed whatever we wanted, posed for pics, etc. Meeting him more than made up for Ace's early, hungover douchebaggery. Jared Leto. I worshipped him as a teenager, mainly from seeing him in Requiem for a Dream and My So-Called Life and his band. But he was the most pretentious and arrogant person in real life. Never meet your heroes. I've heard that so often. The way he talks on a lot of news shows never really sat right with me. Then he became a cult leader and I noped out. Excuse me, what? My professor's daughter was his personal assistant for some time and according to her, he was completely insufferable. Prince Andrew. Spent a lot of time around him about 10 years ago, as working at private social events he attended. The guy's a total prick. Maybe he would have been nicer to you if you were younger. I met Shane Dawson at a restaurant I used to work at. He used to come in a few times a year with his fiancée and in-laws. He's a dick lol. None of my servers liked him or wanted to serve his family, and I damn near had to fight some little girls off the property because they would not leave without seeing him. A famous soap opera star in my country. He came into the Dairy Queen I was working at. I didn't know who he was and my coworker started hyperventilating and went to the back. The guy was rude, and when I handed him his cone he said, "Is that all?" Like he expected extra because he was famous. Yeah dude. If you order one scoop you get one scoop. Didn't find out he was famous until he left and my coworker came back to the front. This is a Dairy Queen sir, not a drama queen. When I was 6 or 7 Hulk Hogan pretend WrestleMania chased me out of a boardroom I wasn't supposed to be playing around in at a little league complex. Cross Bayou in Pinellas County. Anyways, the story is my dad was coaching a game for my brother's team. I went to go sneak around in an empty room. Hulk's son played baseball there too and he must have seen me sneak in the room. I was hiding under the front desk when he came in with his Hulk voice, "Who's sneaking around in here?" and 7-year-old me nearly had a heart attack. He chased me out of the room while I snuck out acting like he couldn't see me. Looking back at it you can tell he was just having fun with a kid and his famous persona. But at the time I was absolutely traumatized and nobody believed my story. Was staying at a Marriott on the concierge level when I walked by the VIP lounge and Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold were sitting in their post-match devouring the biggest shrimp cocktail platter I've ever seen. I nodded and said, "Hey Terry," and Hulk boomed, "Come have some shrimp, brother." I politely declined and said I was going to let them eat in peace. I think he appreciated that more than if I had asked him for an autograph. Hogan is a good dude. I met James Brown back in the 80s when I lived in Vail. The man was dissatisfied with everything and generally drunk. Absolute flip side was meeting Mr. Rogers when I was at Pitt. That man was the real deal. You know the story of Mr. Rogers getting his car stolen. Word got around and the thieves found out. Next day, the car was returned with a note of apology. Nobody f's with Mr. Rogers. Tom Hanks told a story about while he was filming the Mr. Rogers movie, in which he starred. He was in Pittsburgh, and some rough local who knew he was playing Rogers cornered him in an elevator and said, "You know, we take Mr. Rogers very seriously here." Candid Camera tried to prank Mr. Rogers and failed miserably. Mr. Rogers was too nice to give the expected reaction. I have seen people who worked with Mr. Rogers describing him as almost exactly the same as on his show. And that is beautiful. I feel compelled to share this comic. https://geekcerasexy.net/2019/003/the-day-thor-met-mr-rogers-comic/ Diana Ross. I worked in a health club in a hotel across the street from a stadium when I was young. She came in, looked at the pool, which was a really decent lap pool, and said, "My bathtub is bigger than this." I replied, "Go back to your bathtub then." She wanted me fired instantly. HR told me to go home for 2 days because if they fired everyone she wanted fired, the hotel wouldn't have any staff. Deion Sanders. I interviewed him at an NFL military event like 8-9 years ago and he was a prick the whole time. He threw my lav mic on the ground when he was done instead of placing it in my outstretched hand. I was also active duty military at the time and the event was on a ship. Hey Sanders, if you didn't see this, F you dude, F you. I wouldn't say disappointing as I never was eager to meet him, but Drake was just unprofessional and egotistical when I worked with him both times. This was before he got big. First award show type level. He's told me to F off directly and I watched his mom calm him down from a tantrum. This is the most in character story I've read this entire thread. Jimmy really got big-headed after leaving Degrassi. Bill Cosby. Before all his areness was publicly known, he came to the restaurant in DC where I was a hostess. I came to get him for his table and he said, "Did you need a college degree for this job?" No, man. Have you never met a server before? He expected my seat on a plane. He was our local news anchor. Actually said, "I may look familiar." I said, "You're a merchant banker?" The people with the smallest claim to fame are often the most egotistical about it. My dad works at a luxury car dealership. The guy playing adult Simba in the touring cast of Lion King had an issue with his car that couldn't be fixed immediately. When told this, he screamed at my dad, "Do you know who I am?" No dude. Unless someone saw the show the night before and recognized your name, no one knows who you are. Scott Disick and Kourtney Kardashian. We met them in Cancun. They were snobby and stuck up. This was right after Mason was born. They had no interaction with Mason and the nanny did everything. They were super offended that not everyone at the airport knew who they were. Scott Disick was an a-hole. I don't believe you. I met a local weatherman from my neck of the woods. Twice. People love this dude on social media, but the both times I've seen him, he was a total a-hole. On the flip side, I met Emilio Estevez at work. He was cool. Where do you work? He's the vice principal at Shermer High School who oversees all-day detention. That's how he met Emilio Estevez. Justin Timberlake. This was when I was working a drive-thru at a Burger King, around 2002 to 2003 or so. He came up at the drive-thru with someone else driving, but he was sticking his head out like hey at us. I didn't really recognize him, but he asked if we knew who he was, and I said no, but my coworker said yes. Then he looked at me like, "You don't know?" and was just really confused. My coworker said it was Justin Timberlake, and he said, "Yeah, hello, come on man." He then sort of just had small talk. He asked us how work was, how our day was, but here's the thing, the entire time, he is leaning all the way over on the driver, who is clearly horribly uncomfortable and a bit crushed by him leaning over on him. He asked me if I was from the Middle East, and I said no, and he clearly didn't listen and then said, "Yeah, that sucks. Sorry for the whole Afghanistan thing." He then asked us if we wanted his autograph, and we said sure, and he wrote it down and gave it to us. He then said bye and left. It was all in all a really funny experience, and I try not to let it influence my view of him because he was clearly on something, but he just came off a bit like a big goofy attention-loving A the entire time. Not my story, but a coworker's story. Let's call her Holly. Holly was a flight attendant many years ago, and on one flight Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown were in first class. Holly was going through taking drink orders and politely asked Whitney Houston if she would like something to drink but didn't get an answer. So assuming she didn't hear her, Holly asked her again if she would like something to drink. Whitney Houston looked out the window with a disgusted face in response. Bobby Brown then said to Holly, she doesn't speak to the help. Then ordered for her. If you are flying commercial, you are not Hodge. I cannot fathom the level of arrogance it takes to think people are so far below you that they are not deserving of being spoken to by you. I would not have thought Bobby Brown was the politer of the two. I should not. My mom met Bill Cosby once. She said that he kept hitting on her friend. A date told me that when he was a kid, he met Bill Cosby. He was accompanied by his grandma. So Cosby told him a lewd joke that he was going to get with his grandma. As a kid, he was very confused by what Cosby meant. Looking back, it all made sense now. Met Morgan Freeman at a Bed Bath & Beyond. He was shopping for a teapot on a lower shelf and stood upright when I almost walked into him. And I was like, wow, you look just like Morgan Freeman. And he, without skipping a beat, was like, if I was Morgan Freeman, wouldn't I be in Hollywood or something? And the voice made me now like 99.9% certain it's him. And I was like, I guess you would. Enjoy your time here. I don't regret meeting him and don't think he was an A. Just thought it was so Morgan Freeman of him to have a line like that to make you wonder if you met Morgan Freeman or just a guy that likes to act like a character in a bunch of his movies. Every time this thread comes up, James Corden ends up taking it over. Hey James, you won't remember me, but me and my friends sat at a table next to you and Harry Styles, some others in Manchurian Legends in London's Chinatown about 6 years ago. We didn't bother you, but you were a massively entitled see who yelled and treated the waitstaff like shit when one of my party politely suggested you calm down. You got really aggressive and threatening, in a chubby way, like a boozy panda. So my question is this, why did Harry seem so cool, while you were such a massive throbbing bellend? This is from his AMA thread. Literally hundreds of posts like this from X, fans, staff and other actors. Probably only for British people, but my boyfriend saw Peter Kay with his bodyguard in a chippy. Didn't say anything but elbowed his brother. Peter Kay saw him and said, yeah, it is me. Now F off. Pretty harsh considering my boyfriend was only 11 at the time. Cannot wait to see all of these answers cut and pasted on a BuzzFeed article. Pete Rose. Little kids wanted his autograph and he was charging them $5 each in the early to mid 70s. Bill Nye. Meet him when I was like 10 years old. He was a complete a-hole. When I was working at Best Buy back in 2003-09, Robin Williams came into our store and purchased every single copy of MRS. Doubtfire. He then whipped out a Sharpie and signed all 50 plus copies for the employees at the store. He then stuck around telling jokes and just hanging out with the staff. I just wanted to share. He was def the best actor interaction I've had personally. So nice. Rest in peace. James Franco. Though I technically didn't meet him but sat in on a panel he did at a film festival. I was in HS and was at the festival with 3 friends. When we got word he was doing a Q&A about one of his movies that had just come out and we got really excited. We waited over an hour to get in to see the panel. We were let into the room where we waited another 45 minutes for him to show up. When he did show up, boy looked rough. It was almost 4 PM and he looked beyond hungover. His clothes were dirty, he OBV hadn't showered, and he spent more time talking to the floor than anything else. But the cherry on top, his ego could have filled the room. Every question that was asked he made into a story about how great he was, both actor, director, and producer. I do think some of his stuff is funny, but he's a B actor at best. I remember clear as day some woman asked him to describe a role that was challenging for him and how he overcame it. He just laughed at her. The Q&A ended up being so boring I fell asleep in my chair. 0/10. When my best friend was 17, she got snuck into the grand opening of the Playboy Club at the Palms. She got hit on by both a drunken Owen Wilson and a drunken James Franco that night. The difference was that when she clarified her age, Owen was like "oh never mind" and left her alone, and James was like and tried to give her his hotel room key. Are you sure Owen didn't say wow, never mind? Celebrity story with a twist, but it's not mine. When I was in the Marines, one of my sergeants told how he and his buddies were celebrating his bachelor party in Vegas when they saw Rob Riggle in a bar. And remember, Rob Riggle is a Marine Reserve officer, so of course they were excited to meet him. But he seemed a little dismissive and told them, "I've got some things to do, but I'll be back," and he left. And logically they figured he just blew them off. He showed back up 30 minutes later and bought them all drinks and talked with them for a bit. I used to work in a posh hotel in Canada, vague on purpose, and I had met many famous people during my time there. Most were forgettable interactions honestly, but one stands out as the absolute worst. Chevy Chase. He is a trash human being. He was totally miserable and insulting to all the staff, and we treated him with nothing but professional respect and courtesy. If I ever meet him again I'll tell him to his face what a colossal piece of shit is. I can't watch his movies since. For the record, the best celebrity guest for me was Dave Grohl. He's an awesome guy. Everyone always has something nice to say about Dave Grohl. Nobody ever has had nice to say about Chevy Chase. One of the first concerts I attended had the Foo Fighters on one of the main stages. This was when Color and Shape just came out. There was a young guy in a wheelchair in the pit. People were tossing him around, but like carefully, cause you know, don't wanna damage him or the chair. Dave leaned over to check on him during a solo. Kid gave him the thumbs up. Dave had the biggest grin. Gave it back. Yeah, he's definitely someone to look up to. The perfect Grohl model for kids. Dave Grohl is a reffing legend. Man broke his leg during a gig and still finished the set because he didn't want to let his fans down.